evening, everyone. If I could just have your attention. I want to thank everyone for being here today. Today would have been civil rights icon Fred Korematsu's 99th birthday. And we are here to celebrate Governor Doug Ducey's proclamation naming today Fred T. Korematsu Day. We are here to remember Fred Korematsu's fight for civil liberties, his courage to take a stand, and to continue his work to promote equal justice under the law. Representing Governor Doug Ducey's office to read the proclamation is Barry Wong, Executive Director of the Governor's Office of Equal Opportunity.
Thank you, Tom, for the introduction, and I want to thank the Arizona Asian American Bar Association for hosting this reception for this special occasion. Before I read Governor Ducey's proclamation, his message, I would like to acknowledge his General Counsel, Mike Liberty, Mike, and his Deputy General Counsel, Annie Foster, for being here today, and Mike for helping facilitate this proclamation. So Mike, and Annie, come and join us. Join me up here, come on. Mike Liberty, General Counsel, Annie Foster, Deputy General Counsel. And Tom mentioned that we're here to celebrate Governor Ducey's proclamation, but really we're here to celebrate Mr. Fred Korematsu and the courageous steps he took in the face of losing his own liberty during World War II in the internment camps. So without giving away all the information, I'll read the proclamation, which is a message from Governor Ducey. Governor Douglas A. Ducey, State of Arizona, proclamation. Whereas Fred T. Korematsu was an American citizen born on January 30th, 1919, and raised in Oakland, California. And whereas Mr. Korematsu was one of approximately 120,000 innocent people of Japanese descent, 2/3 of whom were American citizens, who were subject to Executive Order 9066 issued by President Franklin D. Roosevelt that required all Japanese Americans be removed from their homes and placed in internment camps. And whereas Mr. Korematsu refused to comply with this order, was arrested, was convicted in federal court, and was placed in an internment camp along with his family members. And whereas Mr. Korematsu courageously appealed his conviction to the United States Supreme Court, which in the landmark case of Korematsu versus United States, which was voted 6-3, that the forced internment camp was justified based on military necessity. And whereas the conviction of Mr. Korematsu was overturned in 1983, and he continued his quest to assure civil liberties for all Americans. And whereas Mr. Korematsu used his story to teach the next generation, protest, but not with violence, and don't be afraid to speak up. One person can make a difference even if it takes 40 years, said Mr. Korematsu. And whereas Arizona stands strong in our commitment to equal justice under the law. Now, therefore, I, Douglas A. Ducey, Governor of the State of Arizona, do hereby proclaim January 30th, 2018 as Fred T. Korematsu Day, signed Governor Douglas A. Ducey. I would ask Mr. Korematsu's son, Ken, if you would come up, I'd like to present this to you.
Thank you. On behalf of the Korematsu family, we are very honored that Governor Ducey has issued a proclamation for Fred Korematsu Day of civil liberties and the Constitution today in the great state of Arizona. I also want to thank Senator Yee, Mike and Annie from the governor's office, Judge Goss, Aline Sullivan, Tom, and the Asian Bar Association for being instrumental in making this happen. Fred was born in Oakland, California on this day, January 30th. My father's struggle for civil rights is now being taught in many classrooms. Thanks to my sister Karen and the Korematsu Institute, every year there are more states and schools that recognize Fred Korematsu and teach his American civil liberties story. Unfortunately, Karen could not be with us today. However, she looks forward to coming back to Phoenix very soon. My father would have been very honored to be here today. He spent the latter years of his life making appearances and speeches to law schools from Harvard to Hawaii, and accepting every honor, including the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President George Clinton. If he were here today, he would close with this famous quote, "If you see something that's wrong, don't be afraid to speak up." Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another hand of applause for Ken Korematsu. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for being there.
Thank you. The only thing I would say is that it's incumbent on all of us to honor the legacy, not only in word but also in deed, and to read just a bit, if you'd indulge me, from the dissenting opinion in U.S. versus Korematsu, to infer that examples of individual disloyalty prove group disloyalty and justify discriminatory action against the entire group is to deny that under our system of law, individual guilt is the sole basis for a deprivation of rights. The inference, which is at the very heart of the evacuation orders at issue, has been used in support of the abhorrent and despicable treatment of minority groups by the dictatorial tyrannies which this nation has pledged to destroy. To give constitutional sanction to that bad inference in this case, however well-intentioned, is to adopt one of the cruelest of the rationales used by our enemies to destroy the dignity of the individual and to encourage and open the door to discriminatory actions against other minority groups in the passions of tomorrow. In the words of Mr. Korematsu, if you see something wrong, don't be afraid to speak up. I'll leave you there with you. Thank you.
So Fred Korematsu Day, for me, on a personal level, means that Asian American kids everywhere, thanks to the Korematsu Institute and the materials they provide to the teachers, they don't have to just see the face of the enemy in their lessons. They can see an American citizen who stood up for their rights. On another level, Korematsu Day reminds us that we as a society don't have a great history with how we treat people who look different, and particularly immigrants. And we're reminded that political leaders, even good ones, can be gripped by racism and xenophobia to trample on the Constitution. And Korematsu, Mr. Korematsu, by appealing and standing up for his rights, made sure that the Constitution did stay intact in some way. So I just wanted to end with the importance of protests, and I have a short poem that was written actually in the 1900s by a young woman named Ella Wheeler Wilcox, and I'll just read part of it. She says, "To sin by silence when we should protest makes cowards out of men. The human race has climbed on protest. Had no voice been raised against injustice and ignorance, the Inquisition yet would serve the law, and guillotines decide our least disputes. The few who dare must speak and speak again to right the wrongs of many." So I thank Mr. Korematsu for making sure that we right the wrongs of many, and that I hope we can make this Korematsu not just a proclamation every year, but we can put it into legislation so it's a permanent holiday or a permanent recognized day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is actually a very important day because it's also the 50th anniversary of fair housing. I don't know if a lot of people are aware of that. And you really need some brave souls to really step forward and make sure that all of us have equal rights to homes and the rights of American citizens. And the fact that that was taken away at one point in time to Japanese Americans really kind of rung true as to the kind of things that could happen in times of war or those kind of things where societal pressures really can kind of dissuade or persuade people to take people's rights away. We really have to protect that because it really is a special thing to be an American citizen, and we should really always think about those rights and preserve them. One thing I did want to mention is my father actually was interned at the Gila Bend in Arizona, and my mother was in Manzanar. And my grandfather used to be a predominant person in the Japanese society in California because he was one of the first, or one of the few that was bilingual in both Japanese and English, and he was able to negotiate higher prices for the Japanese farmers. Some of them were getting taken advantage of because they couldn't negotiate for themselves. And then when he was interned, unfortunately, he was in a helpless situation. And unfortunately, his status in life kind of shrunk with that. And he unfortunately was never the same as a result of that. And it really speaks to how events in life can change when your rights are taken away. So this day is very special to my family for obvious reasons. And hopefully we'll never have another event like that happen. And we remember Fred Korematsu and remember the Bill of Rights and what we cherish as American citizens.
First, I'm thrilled that everyone's here. I want to thank the governor, and Annie, please share that, Michael and Annie for making sure that the proclamation happened. I heard Karen speak last year, and her words moved me because she took a case that I had read in constitutional law, things I had studied in high school, and she put a human face on them. And Ken did the same thing again for me today, as did Cece. My message is kind of following through, and I'll paraphrase what Mr. Korematsu says. If you see something that needs to be done, do it. And so going forward, my challenge to all of you is to make it that permanent holiday. I've already talked to some folks about it, but it's going to take people reaching out and having the legislature do either a concurrent resolution or a bill that declares January 30th every year to be Fred T. Korematsu Day, so that we always remember. And also, we were fortunate today that we met the newest member of the State Board of Education that Governor Ducey appointed, who's interested in making sure, as they rewrite their social sciences curriculum, to include a piece about Fred Korematsu, and she's very interested. So our timing was perfect to have that happen. So each of you, please reach out and be a part of helping make that happen as we go forward. I prefer always remember to don't forget. It's not technically a double negative, but it feels like it is. So I encourage everybody to always remember, and if you see something that needs to be done, including remembering what happened here, do it.
Thank you very much, Judge Goss. Thank you very much. I just want to conclude the remarks by thanking everyone for coming out here, for everyone for supporting Fred Korematsu Day, and for everyone that was involved in making this happen, from the governor's office to Judge Goss. A very, very special thanks to Ken Korematsu flying down, making this an extra special day for everybody involved. And I want to say this is for Fred Korematsu because today we all stand together in this room for civil rights, for civil liberties, and for having the courage to do what's right. So I encourage everyone to take a book from him, and if you see something that's wrong, do something about it. Thank you, everybody.